questions. So yeah, I'm kind of excited about the idea of at least doing some practice problems. So I set up a new GitHub account just with a blank email and set us up with a Exercism account so that maybe we could just work through collectively on solving a couple of practice problems with Elm. So it looks like they have like 36 different problems. I was thinking even if we just wanted to start with the Hello World, that would be a good start for us. So if you want, does anyone want to volunteer and just start on the first one and write out Hello World with Elm, and then we could perhaps go from there in terms of iterating on how we want to structure the rest of it. So you haven't written any code? Okay, so maybe Brian, do you want to start too?
Sure.
Yeah, because I think this is probably good. I think the concept behind mob programming is that if the person up here shouldn't have to do much thinking if we're all just collectively helping solve the problem.
Right, that's a place for me.
So can everyone see, or does anyone have any I guess questions about how exorcism works? Just for some background, it's like a collection of problems that people can solve as like an exercise. And yeah, essentially you write code locally and then you push it up to exorcism and you can compare your answers with other people's solutions as well.
And does this test folder have stuff that will get run to validate locally? Okay.
So I think all the instructions we need should be there in helloworld.io.
Okay. So I would kind of half naively think that I'd want something like that in there. So I have this function that takes an argument that is maybe a string and then it returns a string.
Does it say what the output is supposed to be? Does it say what the output is supposed to be?
So you could probably check the tests to see what it's looking for.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to import the module and expose that function. And I'm supposed to get that if I have no name value. How do I run the test down here to see if
I'm
I'm...
back to Exorcism in the web browser. Yeah, there you go. So there's Exorcism fetch is the first command. And then it looks like to the left there's running the test.
Okay.
So I think we might have.
Have you already...
It's been a while.
So that project template comes from Exercism then?
Yeah. So the way that the directory is set up is that there's an Elm Orlando folder. Inside
Oh,
that
so I need to
folder,
get down.
There's an Elm folder. And then inside.
Whoops. Oh, so I'm already in... Where am I in?
Actually, that's a good question. Try ls. So
Okay.
that's Exorcism then Elm.
Okay. And now... Oh,
Oh yeah. There's a
thank you. Success. All right. And
Is this
then...
first time unit test framework? Or what?
I think there's an own test framework that I think will allow us to run other tests that come with Exercism. Cool. I'm happy it's working because I wasn't sure. So this is perhaps one of the interesting parts of Elm, right? In like almost all the other programming languages, you have very simple hello world, but in our case, it actually might not be so easy, right? Because you could have a hello someone or a hello no one, and it's kind of baked into Elm. So that's weird. It says pass.
Yeah.
You've gotta take out skips on the test. Go to the test file.
Are there,
Oh, that one there. Once you get the first test passing, remove the skip.
oh, okay. So the first one is okay, but then this skip is what it's kind of complaining about down here?
Yeah.
Alright, so then make sure that that'll make a test fail. There, okay.
Nice.
Okay, so the first one is passing, and then with a sample name, I'm getting that output, but I wanted to get this output. Okay, from there. All right, so that means this function is supposed to work differently depending on what name is, which is what, case statement or? How do I write this?
You got it. Case name of.
Colon or just down to the
And
next?
then just enter. Might just, yeah, you got it. So now we want to think about the different cases, right? Like what are the different possibilities like that name could be? So yeah,
Well,
if
there
you
could
don't
be,
have a background in programming, like essentially Elm is a special type of language that's meant to provide guarantees about the correctness of your program, which is a little different from most programming languages, like JavaScript, for instance, where you could just create a program and run it, and you won't find out that there's problems until it's actually being run. So when you go to a website and it crashes and it says, I don't know who you are, or something happens, that's because the programmer didn't intend or didn't anticipate that something weird was going to happen there. And in Elm, you can actually, it's a compiled language where it actually gets, like, you provide cases for every possible thing that could happen. And if it compiles, it'll actually catch any errors while you're writing the program. So you can be
Fix it before you launch.
exactly, yeah. So it's Elm's famous for having no runtime errors, which means you're basically catching errors while you're writing the program instead of your users catching them while it's.
That's pretty cool. They do that with mobile apps as well, like that kind of language to see.
Yeah, there's so what would you call that? Like type confidence-driven programming.
Can you use Elm for native development or?
Yeah, so like instead of launching out an app and then seeing like where the failures happen, you kind of do it in Elm. So you can see where the errors are before you launch and run the scenarios of like, hey, the user might, I don't know, press this button at this time that might crash.
I think there's an Elm native that's, I don't know how advanced it is right now.
I think I know what you're saying. Like, yeah, it's like say there's like a thing that some code dedicated to like if the user types this in, like this should be the result. Like Elm will force you to handle every possible case in existence for that that case, so that the user can't do anything mysterious, like when you've launched the app and like your code just doesn't know how to handle it. Like Elm is like, you're gonna handle that right now, and not like let the user figure out that it's broken.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I didn't mean to send us off on a tangent.
Yeah, so what would be the more like idiomatically Elm thing to do here, to handle the string case or to handle the,
So let's go back to the.
This is
Other
building JavaScript
case.
and running it, if that answers your question.
So like.
It's building, it's transpiling JavaScript and running that, it's not needed. If that's what you're asking.
I think you've got the right idea, so like, expect equal, if we pass in, so the actual function call is all the way to the right on the tests.
right?
So it's expect equal, hello Alice is the one that we're working with.
Uh-huh.
And it's calling the function, it's saying hello world, and we're passing in Alice as the person. But if you notice, it's actually not passing in Alice as a string, it's passing just Alice. So does anyone wanna give some background as to why it's just Alice instead of Alice as a string?
Is that because of this maybe up here?
Exactly.
So the just and the maybe are kind of wrappers around the string? Or one's a wrapper, while the other's an unwrapper?
The reason being there is no null or nil
Uh-huh,
value in Elm. So if you want to represent something that could be blank,
Uh-huh.
you have to use this maybe to give it the option of having either a value, which is just a value, or nothing, which is the equivalent of what you would use nil for.
right, so there is a nothing, but there's not a nil.
Right.
Okay,
And by wrapping it in that maybe, if you do a case statement on anything that is a maybe, it will force you to do the just and the nothing case. So it kind of enables those checks to take place.
So yeah, I think you just touched on it, it forces you to do which two cases, the just.
The just and the nothing.
Just and nothing.
So in the case of just a name, what would we do? The syntax is an arrow. And I think concatenation is plus plus for Elm.
oops,
So if you hit Command S to save, does it give you any warnings or?
Yep.
Cool, so if you hover over that,
okay, so just that it's missing the other branch?
cool, so yeah, we're essentially using a formatter called Elm Format, which like guides you to writing the correct code. And one of the cool things is you could just hover over the code you wrote and it'll say, you forgot so and so thing. So yeah, this is the right idea, because we're saying that if we pass a name, we're gonna say hello name, and then in any other case, we're gonna just say hello world, right?
Okay, and it seems to not be bothered by that.
That's good, yeah. I think we're already touching on like the sense of confidence, right? Like
Okay,
you're just like, oh, it didn't complain, so it must work.
so it must be right, yeah.
So I need to deploy it now.
So yeah, does anyone else wanna take the third test case? That was good.
Anyone?
And would it be considered equally readable or idiomatic to have the second test case be the underscore versus explicitly nothing, or?
I forgot to save it.
I can put that.
Yeah, I think it's considered, well, I don't know if I should jump ahead, but yeah, like I think in the case where, let's say you added another name, and then forgot to account for that, it would get caught by the.
But yeah, that's pretty accurate, yeah. I was saying, so that's like, the creators of Elm, like, that's like their kind of
Well,
statement.
I just have we could do a comment today and save it so that it that was all.
That's a good way to describe it.
So yeah, we could. I think he brought up a really good point, which is like, what if you wanted it to fail? So maybe I don't want to get us too sidetracked, but I was trying to think of like what would be the benefit of instead of catching all.
Is that what the underscore is? It's the catch-all?
Yeah, exactly. So actually, how do we want to do this? Do we want to propose alternate solutions before we move on? Because I think we could do probably one more practice problem, but I kind of want to stick with this one and say like, what's a different way you might solve this? Do we want to just use exorcism and see? Because I think that's how it kind of works, right?
Another way to do this is to use map.
Okay.
Maybe it has a map function.
Do you want to try and?
Actually, yeah. Some Mac.
So I think one of the ideas with mob programming too is if you want to explain what you're doing as you're.
Oh yeah. So actually, I'm missing. Well, let me erase this before I check where I'm at. So basically, the map function will take the maybe, and if it's a just, it'll call the function that you give it. So in this case, I'm using a lambda, and so it's a maybe string, so the s is a string, and then I'm just creating the string that we had before. And then the with default is basically what happens if the maybe is nothing.
Does the with default the argument you're passing in, does it return that, or does it use that as the S argument?
It'll return it.
Okay.
And I can actually get rid of name. That should still work. No, guess not. Oh, yeah, you're right. I gotta do, I just put the name back, it'll be easier that way. Yeah, but you can compose it as well. Yeah.
So it's cool that it still works.
Mm-hmm. If you want to do it that way.
You can effectively get rid of the map. And you could just
I would hate to write hello twice in situations, so wouldn't we do
what are you talking about, the,
The backslash S.
Oh, yeah,
It's
that's
gone
fine.
now. That just means it's the first thing for argument. But nothing had any special meaning or not.
No, when you start the land, they start with that slash and the argument stuff. Okay, so you just put it in the middle of the string.
But you could not do name or world there, it would really JavaScript, right? Because the nothing would not be logically false.
Right, I think that's what you can get rid of that, but. So it's kind of rough.
Okay, cool. So I think we found the, for exercism, you fetch an exercise, then you can run the test suite. One of the cool things about exercism is that it really forces you to make sure that your code isn't brittle. Like it's actually, the test suites tend to be pretty elaborate. And then I think you can submit your exercise somehow. Unable to submit, okay. Submit. Okay, I think it's exercism submit hello world.elm. So this submits it up to exercism, and the cool thing about this is if we wanted to collectively solve practice problems as a group here in Orlando, we could join an exercism team and then review each other's solutions to different problems. So in this case, we just saw we had like 4 different solutions to hello world, which is relatively trivial in most languages. But yeah, the benefits of Elm that we saw were that you could use very concise code and that it's actually verifying that the code is correct. And yeah, I thought it was so cool that even like the one time where you hit save and it's like, oh, I guess that worked, right? Like, so I think the next thing is you can actually do exercism fetch, and it'll just fetch the next challenge.
So you actually block from the next challenge until you solve the previous?
Not really, but I think yeah, like they are in order, but you could probably skip ahead, I think. So in this case, we finished with the hello world problem, and then the next one would be Bob. So there's a README with these too. So I think I forgot about it, so I didn't mention in the first place. Like there's a little bit of background on how to solve the problems, but for this one, it sounds like it's going to be similar to hello world, where you have a function that's responding to input. So yeah, this could be something similar to like building a Slack bot, right, where you send it some messages and it's supposed to respond with something as well. Does anyone want to, so before we move on, do we have any thoughts on building something, or do we want to keep going with the practice stuff? Is there any feedback on what we've done so far? Does that seem like a good sort of approach where we have someone start, get a test passing? All good? Okay, cool. So does anyone want to start with this new problem set? There's a test file that gives us some idea of what it wants to do. And then there's the actual implementation file, which is here. Okay, yeah, so we got a lot less to work with, right? We basically have a Bob module and then nothing else. I probably shouldn't have shown that before I asked for who wants to volunteer for this one. Yeah, anyone? Robert, do you want to get us started on this one?
So it looks like we need a hay.
Ask questions and feel free to shout out solutions.
Anybody,
I think that's the argument of the test. So it's like what the test will test in. So you want to return what it's expecting.
I was wondering what are the other tests? Are there more than just those two?
oh, so it's to equal whatever, right, so. It's a good point.
You start with the attorney, you work backwards.
Okay,
So it's kind of generic, right? You ask them a
Yeah.
question, if you yell, so I'm guessing that yelling involves an exclamation point.
right. So we're gonna return a string. We're gonna get a string and return a string? Does that seem?
Or maybe string, since one of the readme says that, might address it without actually saying it.
There could be empty strings too.
Yeah, could be.
You could probably just work the test from the top down.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things about this is that Elm gives you so much comfort that we went a whole year of this meetup, and this is actually the first time we're writing tests. So that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted us to do some practice problems, because, yeah, so if you don't have a background in programming, there are some languages like Ruby that really love test-driven development, where you write cases of like things that your program should do, and you expect them to perform a certain way, and then you write your programs and you run the tests, and if they all pass, then that means you did it correctly. And in Elm, the compiler really catches a lot of errors. So some of us have the bad habit of not writing any tests, and we just sort of say like, yeah, I'm pretty sure my program works the way I think it does. But yeah, so there is an Elm test framework that we hadn't used after a full year of this meetup, and this is our first time writing tests to see if our programs actually work the way that we say they do.
Anyone got suggestions? Seems okay to try it first, no? Let's go with, how do we run the test again?
I think it was npm test.
If you install it.
Oh, I don't think I am.
So one of the cool things about Exercism too is that we could submit our initial solution, and then you'd be able to see other people's solutions too. And we might have started with that case statement, and then seen someone else that used maybe.map, or maybe with default, and then suddenly that becomes part of our like repertoire of how to solve problems. there's another website, I don't think it has an Elm track yet, but called codewars.com, which is a similar web-based approach to this. And one of the cool things is that you can upvote other people's solutions, and there's two different categories. There's one for clever, and there's one for best practice. So like,
not the same thing.
exactly, right? So like sometimes I'll be like, I bet I could solve this in like a couple words, but no one else will be able to read what the hell it's doing. So that would be like the clever version. Whereas the best practice might be some people are proposed.
So it's like the mini test, the first test.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember if that's really something or not. Sorry.
Can you maybe run down it? You might only need to use the last character, like the punctuation character, like a case on that, period, exclamation point, question mark, or nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. Or anything else.
Is the case word not an exact match?
It is, yeah.
Trying to think of the function that gets the last.
Depends on what it's
You could go to the string package, right?
Yeah.
See what
structure that maybe do it.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
basis.
But assuming that.
How do you get to the
if you do
It's
command tab,
command tab?
you can go to
On the case. Everything's going to be structured in your case branches. So like you'll have a tuple, match the first thing that's literal, and the next thing is anything.
I think there might be a. Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh, ends with, yeah, that's perfect.
Someone added it
Was
just
it-
for this.
Oh yeah. No, wait a minute.
You could do a reverse on that, and get the first.
There we go.
You could do a reverse and get the first one, I thought that was the first.
If you're casing over a string, and you've got like something to evaluate, you got an expression in there. The values.
Oh yeah. It does, isn't it?
So you could do a series of if statements if you wanted to do that.
If you use ends with,
The approach would.
then you can match on the direct string, right?
You could, then you'd still like probably do
Oh,
a
ends
bunch of
with is
ifs,
really
like if
good.
it ends with this, if it ends with that, if it ends with that. But if you just want to grab that last character and case on that. I might like run down the tests file, because I think there's a bunch of tests.
Yeah.
And see like what other tests you have to expect.
Well, let's just. You want to just start with that one? Ends with? Was there an ends with somewhere?
yeah.
You'll have to change that case to if.
Okay. We're kind of heading down the same path though here, aren't we? Or,
So I think your options are you could elevate that string dot ends with to where you have question. Or you could switch the case to an if statement.
do you guys want to go down that road?
So yeah, I think the if statement's probably better because the case, if we were to do it there, well, I mean, it depends.
Huh.
I don't remember in Elm, the if block is just if and then.
If
Does it
else,
have an is-
if,
if else, it
yeah,
does.
it's,
So yeah, let's just get that, let's start with that and we'll, once we get it passing, we can refactor if we need.
I think you did the same thing where you copied the, you did past it, rather than the expected value.
well, it's,
Like watch
Well,
out is what you're
yeah.
saying to Bob.
well, I think, okay. I think it's,
Oh, I think if we look in the test run itself, is it saying it's looking for whoa chill out or it's
Let's
or
see.
watch out? Oh, I see, that's the,
yeah, okay.
sorry, I think I might have taken us down the wrong path. Can we look at the test cases?
Sure.
So in the event that the string ends with a exclamation point, you do want to have watch out. So I think your if statement is correct at the top.
I think the,
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, the first one is what we're expecting, the second is the argument we're passing in. And you just have it flipped for the watch out one. Like we don't actually have watch out in our code. That's like just the test argument.
Right. So the second one, so that should be this one.
And the other one is what, whatever.
Yeah. Oops.
Nice.
Okay.
So does anyone else want to take the next
I go, no one, so.
Shane? Yeah.
Scroll down.
Let's move on to the next one. So, uppercase gibberish. Is that in here? Okay, so that takes random generator car, spits out a character. Okay, interesting. Oh wait, that's not the right one. Uppercase gibberish. Okay, that takes a number. Okay, so it just spits out random gibberish. Cool. Of length 10.
Interesting. Does that have an exclamation point always? I'm confused as to why it would have the exclamation response. Oh, because uppercase. So we have to make sure that if it's all uppercase, then his response, so it's not just exclamation point. So that's interesting. Oh, okay. Can you have like lots of if statements, like else if, and Elm? Is that a thing? So like you could literally just do like else if some other conditional then, and that would be fine. Okay. So else if could just define a function called is little caps. I'm gonna change this to not from question since it's not always a question, just so I don't get confused. Statement. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to define a function. Does Elm care if you define functions below functions?
No.
Okay, cool. It is all caps. So we take a string, spit out a bool. So wait, let me go look at that uppercase gibberish guy again. Uppercase gib. Okay, so let's look at gibberish. Gibberish. Okay, that's fun. All right, so is there a really naive way we could do is just check if we upcase it, if it just equals the original. I don't know if that's ideal. Does anyone have any ideas about?
I like that one.
I think that's a good idea.
I was
Okay.
thinking of a much longer way of doing it.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I just don't know if the language supports it, I guess it does.
Yeah. Is there like an upcase? Oh, to upper. Cool. So to upper. Or you probably don't have to parentheses, right? Just is that valid, Elm?
String dot to upper.
Oh, true. String dot to upper. Okay. This all caps.
It's great to me.
But we want to. Okay, so we want to do that. We want to do this for that as well. Actually, so yeah, we didn't even need another conditional since we had the same result. String contains. Wait, what did they describe that as? If you yell. So how about we create another function is yelling, takes a string, spits out a bool, yelling. So we can say is all caps. Can you do or? Is that Elm? Cool. Okay.
It's two lines. I wish there were two bars.
Oh, okay. Cool. I mean, not cool, but cool. I feel like if an exclamation point's in the middle of a sentence, it's probably not yelling. Probably just needs to be ends with. So we just do ends with. You do that first, right? And statement. So if it's all caps or that, and that, oh yeah, those are both bool functions, so we should be good. So that will return false if it's not yelling. So then we can just say if is yelling and get rid of this guy. And Elm is not yelling at me. So that's great.
I just almost clapped.
Oh, I did not unskip the test, I think. Oh wait, did I?
Oh, you just didn't save.
Oh. Classic.
Alright.
Anyone with the next one? Nobody.
I'm not quite there yet, I'm good, this is very helpful for me in getting there.
I can do one more. Okay. Okay. Save. Okay, so now we're doing the question case. Very normal, just question mark. So we can follow in the same vein. Just is question string bool is question. Just like is there a way to destructure a string so you could like do like substring like plus plus exclamation point or question mark? Is that a thing where you could do that? Or will it not do that? Because I know like Elixir can do stuff like that, but it also has restraints like you can't do at the end of a string. Does anyone know? That's okay. So we'll just do the boring way. String ends with question mark statement. And then we have to add that. So if is yelling, if is question, what's questioning?
Somebody's picky.
Else if, oh shoot. Is that right? And what is the response? Sure, to everything, okay. Sure. Valid, okay. Cool, okay. Anyone?
Just make it take it.
Does anyone want to go that hasn't gone before?
Don't make me write a JavaScript port. Solve it in JavaScript and send it back. Or a NIF.
Keep in mind that for mob programming, if you haven't written any it doesn't even really matter because that just means that the mob has to tailor what they're saying.
It's more fun that way.
So yeah, it's just like instead of saying yeah, definitely.
So, what? How are we currently at right now?
So we're looking at test.elm at the top.
Yeah.
Going through each test case and getting it passing.
Oh.
So we've done the top 4, and then the 5th one is the one that's the line with skip currently. So we're gonna remove the word skip and that bird beat character right next to it. Reverse bird beat.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, this one?
So yeah, just remove skip and those 2 characters, and then that's the test that we're going to work on.
Okay. So, we're at
So yeah,
this right here?
So asking a numeric question.
Mm-hmm. And then, depending on the answer?
So what we could do, just try removing on line 33, the word skip.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that arrow thing too.
Oh.
And one more character, the pipe character.
Oh, sorry.
And then hit Command S to save. But one of the cool things about Elm is like it should just pop into place if everything is syntactically correct. If it's not, then it'll warn us. So yeah, if you just save the file.
Okay. Show us.
Command S.
Oh, that's right. God. This is like the first time I'm usually like a Linux user. I don't know how to command that.
There you go.
Oh, it was? Okay.
It's sort of just, that's our indicator that everything works properly. is that it just kind of popped into place.
Okay.
If we had done some egregious syntax error, it would have said something or it wouldn't have done anything.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
So-
this test case is, we're writing a function called bob.hey that you can see on line 37. And when we pass it that input, you are what, like 15 question mark? Expect the output to equal sure.
Oh, okay.
So if we go to that bob.elm file to the left at the top,
Yeah. Hold on. Trying to like remember. Where's like page down, or is like the same thing like switching tabs or like the shortcut.
I think.
Command arrow. Oh, no. Oh, that was the other one. Oh, I'll just like use my mouse then. Oh, command. Oh, command
So there you
hold.
go.
Oh, okay, here it is. Yeah. Okay.
So the interesting thing is we already have a case, perhaps, that deals with this, right? We
Okay.
have a case that says else if is questioning statement. We're responding with sure. So it's possible that this might already work. To run the test at the bottom, you can just type npm test
Sure.
and see if it passes.
Does Elm test have a walkthrough? Well, you just like
Oh, test failed.
run the test.
So.
Yeah, I think it does.
Cause that could be cool for this, since like sometimes it's just already tested.
I think it's just npm watch.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So yeah, the cool thing is, just by removing skip, we already have a passing test because of the way we architected our amazing.
All right.
So yeah, let's just go to the next one, right? So test.elm, and
Uh,
we'll go to the next case.
so. Control alt? Was it Control Alt? No. Command Alt. Okay. There it is. Oh, here it is.
So
Okay.
you can use a mouse too if you want, or the trackpad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the next one, I guess, is gibberish then? Testing gibberish. So now it's like,
So the first step we took was to remove that skip, right?
yeah. Okay. That is fine.
Cool.
Should I just like go back and then test it to see if it works?
Good.
Okay. Oh, I have to control. So, like relearning everything, these commands.
And another passing test.
Oh, okay.
That's easy.
You're on fire.
Alright, I'm just gonna use my mouse. Okay, so next one. This one.
Just keep it until it stops you.
Okay, so this one's the first one.
You got greedy.
Failed. Yeah. Okay. So, where do we?
So let's see, it's taking in the input, let's go. I'm happy I read that before reading it out loud. It's talking forcefully, so I'm guessing that ends with an exclamation point? Is that what we already were doing?
Yeah.
So should I like add that in?
So we don't wanna update the test cases, we just wanna
Oh.
update the file itself.
No, I like that idea.
The goal is too far away, just move.
It's that's not passing.
So So it says, I'm guessing talking forcefully involves ending with an exclamation point, and then we want to respond with whatever.
Do you pull on something?
Yeah, I think that's what.
Oh, okay, cool.
That would have been like unintentional timer.
Okay.
So yeah, if you go back to bob.elm,
Mhm.
let's see if we have a case for that. We have an is yelling.
It already says whatever, so we might be wrong in assuming that it means, the exclamation point means somebody's yelling.
Okay.
So we gotta figure out what the difference is then.
Yeah, we look at one of the first tests.
First one, all
Uh-huh.
caps, check the first test.
So the first one was like this area right here? Or are we like looking at the test file? Oh, okay, we're looking at the test first. Okay.
Very top.
Altogether, the test we were starting, we kind of attended spacey back here. We're what, like 15?
Okay, and it's all caps, watch out, and it's all caps. So that is yelling that says or if it ends with an exclamation.
So does that mean?
Yeah.
You can probably get rid of everything, the or and everything after that, in our is yelling.
Okay.
So do we want to?
So now we had to like go back to this in here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're like removing the or statement here? So instead of like, so what, is it like just remove the or statement together or? Okay. Change.
And everything.
Just, oh, everything else?
And now it's just from your cursor to the end. From the,
No,
instead.
Oh, okay. So with this one?
so let's copy that, because I think we still want it, we just want it in a different function.
So far, the only responses are the three that we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Might change later.
Yeah.
do we just remove this statement?
I think the idea is like yelling means that it was all caps, like all
Uh-huh.
caps means yelling. If right now we were saying it's all caps or the exclamation point, but we realize now that exclamation point does not mean yelling anymore. So we're just removing that clause from that expression right there.
Okay.
We can read the text before designing, we're going on a surprise. It's like opening Christmas presents.
Could you also say is yelling equals is all caps?
It's caps yelling is all caps? Okay. Don't know how to get to there. Alright, so right now we're at is all caps yelling statement. So determining.
So you're saying make it so it's only this to.
Save it and try to test it.
Okay. I can do that. Sure. Do-do-do. Oh, not NPM start, my bad. NPM test.
And I think we can talk it out.
Sweet.
Cool, pass it.
I did.
Just ask questions.
So what was the seventh one? I didn't even see it in the test.
The seventh test?
We had 6 passing before, now we have 7. What was the 7th test?
It's like, you wanna, let's go make out behind the gym.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to see who was.
Yeah, it was just.
No, I just,
Alright.
So you wanna do one more? or
what's
should anyone else?
Sure,
it
let's-
checking for though? The test talking forcefully, like, what's it?
Yeah.
It's checking to see that a statement with an exclamation point will still get treated just as a normal sentence if it's not all uppercase.
So
It's almost as though they anticipated somebody not reading all the tests before starting.
okay. So, but I also have some questions. So since I got here a bit late, I was doing some research of like what Elm is. So essentially, is this like it's not really like a framework like React, or is it like React, or is this like more of like, is this like SAS for JavaScript? Is that like
It's a
that?
full programming language, like it's compiled.
Oh, okay.
But it has sort of a framework in a sense built into it.
Like it's more of an architecture.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to leave Elm to build something the way you would build a React application as far as like rendering templates and things of that nature. But it is still a full programming language, general purpose. It's not tied to the web necessarily. It's just like that's where a lot of the work is being done currently.
So this is like a better way to like catch errors for JavaScript? Is that?
Yeah, it's
Is
like
that what we're
it's
doing?
you can think of it as alternative for
Oh, okay.
JavaScript for sure, but also for other stuff too. But right now their focus is just like being better than JavaScript for the most part.
Okay,
Unless
sweet.
I'm mistaken.
Look, it could take the place of React, for example. It's in the same space
Yeah,
as opposed to CSS, like you said.
okay, sweet.
And more than just React, I think it's better to compare with a React Redux combination because those two share the same architecture of a single store of knowledge.
Okay. And skip, is that just like a keyword just saying to like skip this test and that's what that whole thing was? Alright, so now is, okay. So now using acronyms and regular speech.
So skip is specific to Elm test
It's a function.
and Elm
Yeah.
test.
Okay,
You're just making the test and going.
Yeah, it's just more.
oh, well, that makes it a lot better. Okay, so sec not equal, whatever. It's okay if you don't want to go to the DMV.
So it sounds like this is checking to see if our check for everything being capital letters, if we were just checking for that in a certain spot, or if it were like, it's saying, we're gonna throw some capital letters at you and see if your program still responds correctly, which I believe it will, so I think if we save this file and then just run the test again, it should still pass. Nice.
Sweet.
So now it gets interesting, right? Because now we have all caps and a question.
So,
So many emotions.
so,
So we could just save it and run the test and see what, if anything, fails about it.
so in the layout here, test, like this is like the condition like checking forceful questions. So is that just like a variable or something like that in
That's just
the,
a name for the test.
Yeah.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, just describing what you're actually testing.
And then expect that equal is like that's the actual input that you're receiving?
Yeah, it's like the assertion. So the first thing is like the value if everything goes well, that's what it should be. And then the other thing is like the actual thing code that you're running to test.
Oh,
So
so
those
this
two
is the
match
actual,
at the end.
okay. Alright. Okay.
Let's see if we got lucky on that.
Yeah, or just
By the end, we'll be doing natural language processing.
So,
Office version of Siri that had 3 responses. Woke them out.
so that one needs to be changed?
Oh, that's great. It's past 10. But does it say test failed?
No, it's just these are skips.
Oh, okay.
Like yeah, we're still good.
Okay. Sweet.
Now we're good.
So this one around, okay. So,
So numbers shouldn't be considered shouting, but currently it is, right? So let's go to bob.elm and see what we call our function.
oh, actually, we'll just have it like this, but,
Numbers are showing, there's lowercase and numbers.
So it sounds like we're calling this hey function, passing in a string that contains essentially just numbers with no letters.
Mm.
So on that first case, we're saying is yelling statement. And it's actually hitting that one, I think. So when we pass in a string that just contains numbers, it's saying, whoa, chill out. That's the response.
Mhm.
But we actually want it to say whatever.
Okay.
So how would we go about doing that?
If it has any lowercase characters in it, then,
Like checking whether like it's like yeah like letters and numbers.
Yeah.
So okay. So from there, just a basic check statement. So we just like use if then like if else times that or we like using booleans here.
I think it'd be like within the is yelling function, it'd be a good idea to make sure that instead of just checking for his all caps, checking for the case where it's like the numbers are wide, like the all caps are equivalent. It's like you do capital 1 is 1.
Yeah.
So something along the lines of verifying that it's just like it has like some actual like uppercase words in there too. Because you could be yelling numbers too.
if it has one lowercase letter, that's all it would be sufficient.
Yeah, that sounds right. Or like a letter in general. And
And
then
if it was all uppercase, it would still be yellow.
yeah, that's what I would say.
So if you have one.
So do we want to look in the string package to see if there's a function that's has letters?
You know, there's a char, like a char, CHR character module too that has some predicates like is uppercase or is letter is legit, that sort of thing. Might be helpful if you want to know some things the letters. That might be the best step too. Or you can use a regular expression if you like.
So
What did you use in that?
They're right.
The phone one is in that, chart, this one.
Yes.
That's good.
so we're checking the documentation right now. And if that's the case, how do I access the internet on this thing? Dude, is there like
Swipe 4 fingers to the left or the right, you're gonna have that.
what
With 4 fingers on the trackpad, swipe.
oh Jesus.
Other way. 0
only in an Apple device, I swear to
I guess put your eye to the camera for the record.
Okay. So there.
It has a number and it's not yellow.
I don't think
So
the
we like-
character's a number, I think the character's a lowercase, if there's one lowercase character, then we know it got converted to upper. If you're checking for numbers, it doesn't prove anything, I don't think.
Yeah, I think, just the existence of a character will allow his all caps function to declare it's equally or not.
Is all caps. Is there a character? Is that what we're trying to find? Like, is there a character?
Mhm.
There's no character. Sorry, not character. A letter.
Okay. So are we like checking like for booleans right now? Or we're checking like for booleans or like characters? Let's see.
So we could convert our string to a list of characters and then
Doesn't the regex package just take a string and it checks a character?
you could use a regular expression.
I think there's a packet there. Well,
What, like package like right here? For the string?
we can do this.
These?
You can solve the whole problem with one regular expression.
Right, exactly. Every app can be one giant regular expression.
It's true, you can use that.
Yeah, I don't know what this is.
But how do we do that in a functional way? I don't wanna
We can use.
train myself to think in functions, like regex is,
Yeah, I mean,
It's okay.
regex is
String, boolean.
You think of it like a function, it's like a pure function, just spits out an output. Either if you're matching or have a capture.
I'm talking about in terms of Elm functional, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can do regex in every language that supports it.
Well, one of the functions that I use is kind of similar to the map function, which is just take the string and check each character through.
Right, as soon as you have a lower, then you know it's not yellow.
So we're checking for maps.
Or you could do a check to see that if is lower equals is upper.
Mhm.
Because that means there are no characters, any characters that wouldn't match.
Mhm.
And then do the is upper check. And then we don't use our descriptions.
Okay. And we're writing that under like is yelling?
What?
We're writing that under like is yelling or?
Yeah, because it's like is yelling logic is flawed right now. So it's
Okay.
saying that 1, 2, 3 is yelling.
So was this like the case where we had to like save the one that we previously cut out to check with that? Or
What do you mean cut out? What do you
like I don't know if I still have it. This section.
Oh no, that's we
Yeah, that's-
decided that exclamation points had nothing to do with yelling.
Oh,
This code.
so we don't need that.
You delete that whole line.
Okay. So maybe like do like a ternary operator. Are we allowed to do that right now? Oh no, we can't. Okay.
But ifs are expressions and that's taken sequence, so just that anywhere you want.
Mhm.
So if you like do if then else.
Oh,
say-
okay. So.
Also,
Do we not have curly braces now? Nope. Okay. Great. So this is like more just like
No
plain
parentheses.
words.
No
Than,
parentheses.
okay, no parentheses. Great. So if statement and so we're just like checking whether or not it is numbers or what.
One way we could do it is you could create another function called like has character or has letters, and then you can do the pure check for like does this statement have any letters, and then you can use that as yelling to say like has letters and is all caps, and that would be our yelling case.
Sure. Great. Okay. How do we have make functions in Elm?
Those are all functions, you can define them.
Oh,
like, follow that
okay.
list.
Okay. So like is number? Is that good?
You could do that.
Okay.
But then just check to see. Well, we might not want to do that because then what if the test case was like @ caret sign, like random other stuff. Like it's not the fact that it's just numbers. What we want to find is if the statement has any letters. Like that's what we actually care about.
So has letters. That's good. Has letter. Okay. And so it's like accepting like a string output or input.
Yeah.
Same thing like so since it's outputting a bool. Okay. Oh. Okay. Good. Okay. So. Okay, so we're checking if it does have a letter now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there like pre-built function that Elm has for this?
I think we want to break down the string into letters, right, or characters, and then check if any of those is a letter.
Okay, so an array with a for loop?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, an
Or-
array in Elm is called a list.
Except there are arrays.
And there's all these.
Just they're hardly used.
So we'll
Okay.
break down the string into a list of characters essentially.
Okay. So now we're having, so a list is like, just like list, and that's, now it's declared.
So, do we wanna say like list.map to map through the string, one character at a time? Or,
Yeah, strings aren't implicitly list of characters, so you do have to use, there's a function called string dot toList, and that'll convert the string to a list of characters.
And isn't there like a call or any?
Like this?
Yeah, there's.
Oh, okay.
Can you pass any, like a lambda, which like that, or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No semicolons, right? Like such a habit of like,
Or parentheses.
okay. I always like had to like stop myself there. I was like, oh, okay,
And to apply an argument to a function, you just separate them with a space.
okay.
Generally in parentheses.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Instinct.
Who knows that? Okay. So to list string, and then we doing this.
So from there, I think the idea is to take that and you can pipe that to another function. Like it's a nice way to sort of see how your data flows through some series of operations.
Okay.
So instead of the double equals,
Just like,
if you were to do like a more traditional way and switch to that, what you could do is use there's a function called list.any, and it takes a function and a list, and the function is a predicate function that has to return a boolean for each element in the list, and as soon as it reaches one where it's false, as soon as it reaches the false element, it returns false for the whole thing. So that's kind of what we want, right? We want to like check every character, and as soon as we find one that's not a letter, just return false.
yes. Okay.
So at the very beginning, it's like,
yeah.
Even before that.
Oh.
So string at the beginning there is would be capital S.
Oh.
It's a module called string.
Okay.
And those modules like correspond to the documentation that you're looking at. Like on the right hand side, there was like a list of all the modules in core, which is like the bare bones. It's the stuff you need to get started with.
Okay. Alright. So what was the thing you were saying about like the list, like the different function?
So actually, you can get rid of, just to clean up, you can get rid of that quality check.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you can keep that.
Oh, just like the
First statement, first use of the word statement, you can keep that, and then get rid of that to the end of the line. Cursor to the end of the line, you can delete.
Oh, okay. By the way, in like a Mac, is it only backspace like all the time? Like it says delete, and then the thing is like a backspace. So I don't know why they don't just say backspace. So no. Oh, is that the thing?
That's like the Vim way to do it. I was just
Oh, okay.
There's a Vim key bindings for Visual Studio Code.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it has like Vim?
What?
It has Vim?
Well, you can install it. I don't know if it's installed in this
okay.
version of Visual Studio Code.
I usually use Atom, so I'm not too familiar with this either.
cool, so we've got our statement, we've broken it into a list of characters. And now we wanna use the list module to ask if any of those characters are what?
So actually, let's go back to the documentation and check the CHAR. I gotta say car because that's the beginning of the word character, but it's not weird to say out loud, so. Check the module, so on the right hand side. that is,
Alright.
it's a list of modules.
How do we scroll?
2 fingers.
Oh, it's let's go scrolling now. Oh God, okay, I'm just gonna like use okay, so charm thing. Oh, this one right here. So we're just like
Yeah,
using.
but we're looking for something for like his letter.
If you're gonna do his digit, then you'd have to check for his pound sign, his whatever, you'd have to go through the whole gamut.
Yeah, I guess we're writing a reference.
Can you convert like characters to like their integer code?
That's like C++
But, I
style,
mean,
but
Isn't it true that as soon as you encounter one lowercase character, you know it's not yelling? It's as simple as that.
So you could do the not is equal to two lower.
Yeah, so well, when you can check per character, if there is a character, the lowercase version of that won't equal the uppercase version of that. That's like a really naive way that makes it so you don't actually have to iterate over every character. So it's like if it's all symbols or all numbers, those will equal each other. So
Okay.
you know there's no characters, but a single character it'll make them not equal.
Okay.
So you could say the function has letter could just be statement lowercase doesn't still statement.
But what he's doing right now, you could just do the is lower on,
Yeah.
on the one character, because he's already got the string dot list.
Yeah.
So if there's with any on that, if any is lower, then it's false.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's another. Yeah. Well, what if you pass in like a number into that though? I wonder what that would return.
Doesn't really specify whether it sounds like it's A through Z, but it's just some ASCII characters, or ASCII letters.
Oh, it won't accept anything other. Well, yeah, maybe isn't like the number still a ASCII character though? So I wonder what.
Yeah, I don't
consider
really know.
lower.
Right.
It does say ASCII letters, so it's
Oh.
possible that if is lower evaluates to true, then it's doing the hard work for us. Or validating that it is in fact a letter.
That's interesting. For like arbitrary strings, like.
I was looking at the source.
Yeah, so we're just gonna
This is the
try
way we
that.
run tires.
Okay. So
What's the any syntax? Is it string dot to list dot any?
So it's list.any.
You know, are you gonna use like so one of those is upper or is lower?
yeah.
So you can
So we're-
start out just type character, vertical bar,
Yeah.
and
Pipe.
then just one of them, and then
Wait. So is this this is an or statement here, right? This is an or
Yeah.
statement. We got that. Okay.
we're
So
looking to pipe something.
oh, that's okay. So that's just a single pipe. That's like piping, like redirecting
So,
or something.
yeah, we want a vertical bar and then we want a greater than symbol.
Okay.
So it makes a pipe, and we're gonna pipe the
No space?
results of
Okay.
that, the string dot to list statement into the next thing. So you just consider it like an arrow, like take the result of this computation and pass it along to this next thing we're gonna do.
It's like a Unix pipe, pretty much.
Okay.
So yeah, in this case, we're gonna pipe it to list dot any, right? Like, so the module name is list, which is capital, and then any, is the function name, it's not that module. Good question, what it should be?
We're going.
Question.
So
Shard dot lower.
Doesn't the first argument have to be the lambda though? And you're piping it in the list as the first argument.
So you
No, it'll go as a second. So if you put your function now, like shard dot is lower or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Then what comes out of two lists will be the second argument. So
like looks or types things in that first position, but
Yeah.
types it to the last.
Oh, weird, okay. Can see.
yeah, that is weird.
Cool.
So what
So-
they're saying in a complicated manner is that we're gonna take the result from the left side and just pipe it to the right. But what we're missing here is list dot any, and we're saying any what, like any, is any of these things gonna evaluate to true? So we need something boolean here, we need something that evaluates to like, so we've got a list of, let's say we have the string hello world, we're breaking it into characters, so we're saying H, E, L, L, O. And those are each individual characters, and we're gonna go one at a time and say, is anything in this list what we're looking for, which is a letter. So one of the ways to do that is to say character dot to lower, is that what we wanted to try? forgot what it was called.
Is lower.
I think it's,
It's lower,
It is lower, yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah,
here
it's
we're
lower.
looking at the character module, char,
okay.
car, whatever you wanna call it. Char dot is lower.
Is it like a L, like a capital L, or is it like lowercase L?
Yeah, I think it,
Okay, so,
it's is and then capital L.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
try and hit Command S to save and see if it complains about it.
We want to know if it has an uppercase letter too. In fact, we could just make a function. You could check for both if you want.
Oh, so apparently it failed, I guess?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we're looking, we want to check if it has an uppercase letter too.
Okay, Yeah.
do you?
So the right,
so do we just add like another one?
well then, then you can write
Maybe I'm just thinking about it.
or you could just, you could negate the boolean if you,
Right.
so it has upper letter or has lower letter.
Well, but yelling is all uppercase, so the fact that there's an uppercase doesn't really help you. They're either all uppercase or there's one lower, right?
Well, it's saying you either wanted to find a letter or you wanted to find an uppercase letter. Or you don't want to find a
But
lowercase letter.
if I find an uppercase letter, then I gotta look at the next one and see if the next one's up, I have to keep going until the end, right? As soon as I get any lower, then I'm done.
Yeah, I follow that. That's the check, and then you just negate that to see if it's yelling.
So, if all caps,
That was like error.
and the function below it said it has letter, should be has lower,
Right here.
right? If I may be thinking about it wrong.
No, I think they're all valid ways to think about it. You just haven't actually included like how it's being called, so
Right,
That's-
well, the way it's being called is not correct yet.
it's not there yet, right?
Oh, okay. True.
So
Yes, I think the idea is we change this function pretty much so that it's not really checking for has letter anymore, it's checking for if it has a lowercase letter.
Mhm.
So you change the function name to be like has lowercase letter,
oh, okay.
and then that could be our way to determine if it's all caps, because we could say like if it has a lowercase letter, then it's not all caps. But this is given that it'll handle like a number or like a non-letter character as we like wanted to. We just should return false, I guess.
This,
Yeah, and then I guess it is all caps, instead of just checking if the upper is equal to the statement, you would say like has lowercase letter is equal to false, because we wanna like
right here, or is this like a different line?
the
Right.
is all caps function, or like changing our.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay,
what
I
is
see
all
it.
caps.
You don't need the is upper in the end, right?
Yeah, I added that in because somebody like mentioned.
Oh, okay, but at this point, yeah, you don't want to get rid of it since we've changed.
Oh, okay. So is all caps. We're like checking now for what was that?
So like is all caps, previously we were saying if the statement is all uppercase is equal to the normal statement, that means it's all caps. We determined that's not always the case, because like numbers.
Yeah.
So now our check is to see if the statement has any lowercase letters, that means it's not all caps. So the is all caps function would just be has lowercase letter statement is equal to false. Because if it's
or
Yeah.
not, and then the function call.
yeah.
So we're adapting this line to like
Yeah.
has
Leave
like.
that, that's
Oh, that's weird. I don't know what that one.
Fine now.
Time's up.
Okay.
Still need to keep the first check.
Are the two upper?
Yeah, because if it's all letters, it's gonna not find the lowercase letter either.
So we're changing this part to is upper, right?
Okay.
You're doing that. That's like the function I had to like use, right? Like the is upper and then just checking it. So run it again. Apparently it's still.
Wait, no. The is upper is. think string is upper as a function, I think you want string to upper.
Oh, here it is. All right. And it's like still
I
fine.
was complaining because
Yeah, his
his
question.
yelling is not complete. On line 16.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Didn't even see that. Okay, so if all
So you wanna and on is all caps to say and not has lowercase letter.
Without still return, that still gives the wrong value for like the all numbers, because that would be like, is all caps would still return
That's true.
the same, and then it would also say there's no lowercase letters.
so we're passing like in this line we're passing like this function to there, right?
Sorry, I didn't follow your question.
So like right now is yelling we're in the is yelling function. So what the function we just like used, I just have to call that in there.
Yeah, you could totally call any function from is yelling.
Okay. And then like I just pass it in statement, right?
Except the check-in is yelling is that it has to be all caps, right? It needs to pass Ellen and it needs to not pass has lowercase letters. True for all caps and false for has lowercase. Is that right? If you're yelling that it is in all caps and it has.
But our numbers case still falls through the case where there's no letters at all, it still falls through, right? Because it's gonna say. It's like about ending those two. So,
No, because if it has no letters, then has lowercase letter will be false.
if it's all caps.
Yeah, actually, I think has lowercase letters not gonna help us out here. So then we gotta have to backtrack to has letter again. That's kind of what we care about.
Okay. So now we're just changing this, I guess, to
I think it's good. Can we try it before we dismantle this?
sure.
Or write like the full thing that you're thinking,
Yeah.
Is yelling.
Well,
Yeah, because,
So,
there's, we're doing a boolean, so there's,
Well,
a lot of ways to put that together, put your and, your or, your not, your whatever.
Right, all caps is true if it's all caps, or if it's numbers or symbols or whatever, right? So all caps is usually gonna get us there, unless,
Well, our all caps check is really like checking for the absence of a lowercase letter. But it doesn't check for the presence of any uppercase letters.
So the reason why it's
All caps are not.
why it's failing now is that in Elm, you can't just have if, then, you need if, then, else. So, we don't have a,
So it has to have like a default like it can't just be like if okay.
so yeah, on line 18, you wanna add your else.
Does it have can like be blank or is
You
that
could return whatever you want, so like if it's a boolean, we would wanna return false or, with a capital F, or true, or just anything to get it passing it. So, booleans in Elm would be capital, so you got false, but with a capital F. See if that just at least gets rid of that, red line.
oh good.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, this was just like giving me heart attacks for like the last half hour, just to see that our program was like irreparably damaged.
Yeah.
To the extent that we were
like, kind of stuff like this.
Okay. So
So it looks like we've got another error on line 34. List document here.
char that is lower.
No, you have to import the car.
Oh, okay. So at the very top of the file, try
It's like right underneath module. Okay.
So you say import char,
That's it?
and that's it.
Okay.
so is yelling be true if it's all numbers? It should.
No, that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah, I don't know, it seems like what I was thinking might not turn out, so.
We could just do the regs.
I think there's like a regex contains and sort of.
There it is, yeah.
Let's find an external API that can answer the questions for us.
Just make the HTTP request.
So,
I think we
No, I think it does work though. If it's all caps the way it is and it's not as lower, then it'll work.
Not without the numbers though. It's
But-
numbers.
our check for is all caps is just checking for the absence of the lowercase.
Yeah, but it'll still work though. Because has lower is gonna return false.
Well, Greg, do you wanna go up and, take over this? This is what I think we might be able to get to the bottom, where it's
I'm just not sure about the syntax, you'll have to help me with that. If is all caps statement, so is all caps and not has lowercase letter. So, how do I copy? Control C? Command C.
I don't think the whole thing is selected.
But this is what I want, right? Is that valid or am I thinking wrong?
I think you have to pass something that has lowercase letter, so statement.
I'll just write it the way I'm thinking it and then you can tell me how to change the syntax. So if it is all caps is gonna be true if it's all numbers, right? Which is a false positive, right? So but if it has one lowercase letter, then we know it's not a false positive. We know that it's actually not yelling. So it would be like,
But if it is all yelling then has lowercase letter would return false. And then you wouldn't get into that if block. You would go over to the else and it would return false, even if it is yelling.
so this isn't gonna work like this. I think this is what I was thinking, so.
Oh, I didn't see you're negating that has lowercase
So
letter.
I think to negate, you just use the word not instead of an exclamation point. And then before the word then, you wanna use the word statement, because you still need to pass it there. And I think, do we have to wrap any of that in parentheses?
Yeah.
So,
Everything up to the not, well, not the then, but.
so yeah,
Lowercase letter.
I don't think you have to wrap anything in parentheses. Okay. Because the not is gonna bind, the not is a function call and it's gonna, I see what you're saying. Yes, that has lowercase, that's
Yeah.
letter.
Where, Amina?
I'm sorry.
so right after not, an open parentheses, and then right before then, a closed parentheses. And are we saying that if it's all caps and it's not, has lowercase letter,
Then it's
it's
still,
supposed to return true?
right, so,
So since we're in that situation where it's just if and else, we might be able to just remove line 19 through 22. And then the words if and then, and retest it. Because it's
Did-
just returning a boolean, right?
remove if and then?
Yeah. And we'll be able to test whether
What's the end button?
command right.
Huh.
Alright, so run the test.
Command S to compile it?
Or yeah, save it.
Was it test?
Yep.
So,
So I failed, which one? Okay.
so it looks like, I'm still thinking wrong about it, so.
Yeah, just imagine, like, that statement is just numbers, like the number one. So if it's all caps right now, it's saying true, and not has lowercase letters is also true. So if it's just a number one right now, it's still gonna say it's yelling. That's so that we wanna, do,
So I think,
So then you have to add to it and has letter or something.
yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna go for. So one way we could do it is take a string bool. So if it has a letter, we'll know that string to upper of the statement cannot equal string not to lower of the statement. If it's all numbers, then those will be equal. But if there's any letters, those will not match because we'll have the lowercase version, we'll have the uppercase version. So that's like kind of a naive way to check that.
That's awesome.
And we won't need this, oh, I have the 3-finger drag thing. Won't need that.
The not equal operator in Elm, I think is slash equal.
Slash
I
equal?
can't remember if it's forward slash.
This?
I think so.
Cool, okay. So is all caps, this is still fine, but now is yelling has to say has letter statement and is all caps statement. Cool.
Nice.
There we go.
Check it in quick.
So I think one of the cool things is like, this might be Bob, but essentially we're rebuilding Siri from the ground up. Like,
Siri just has a bunch more cases. So what would be the next thing? Oh wow, so there's like 100 other test cases. I remember this being difficult, but I was like, man, like I think mine was failing every step of the way. So a question with,
Assuming what mistakes he'll make. Test case for it. It's pretty cool.
so let's see how many of these pass without doing anything, right? I should be reading out what it's actually doing, right? But they're all passing, so I'm just gonna act like I'm not even here. Question with only numbers, we handled that case. Shouting with special characters, we handled that as well. Whoa, chill out. That seems to be working. Statement
Shell out
containing.
in Elm. Because we can have it shell out to max say to actually be saying these things already.
That would be cool, yeah.
Can you do that? No, like shell out like a
Operating system.
like it's even not to say.
It actually just worked. It was just set it very low.
Oh, we have like port to JavaScript.
So we might have finally gotten somewhere where we have a issue. In the event that we have an empty string or prolonged silence. So it looks like we finally got some more. Does anyone want to handle the case where there's a empty string or
White space.
yeah, white space? Should I go for it?
Just on its own one very, very late expression.
If there's a what? Yeah, I think so too. What is it? So that should get one more passing. And then what Robert was saying is that for this next one, this actually wouldn't work, right? Because we're just checking for a string that has some empty space in it. So what we could do is say string.trim statement and then check again. Cool. So alternate silences, I have a feeling this is where it's going to get weird. Oh, it's still passing. So my fear of having 1,000 test cases that weren't working is apparently not a big deal. We got all of our tests passing. So I feel like I'm going to take credit for everything because it felt like I did nothing and it all still passed. So one of the cool things is that when we do submit these to the UI for Exercism, is you can actually see the things that you submitted. So available exercises, we did Hello World, and I think somewhere in here, I thought you could actually see. Okay, so exercises, we submitted this Hello World version, and in the web UI, you can actually see the solution that we came up with, and then I think see other implementations of Hello World, and it's kind of cool that you can look through other people. So yeah, you can see their initial solution that we had was actually the first one that someone had in here. And we could probably do the same for our exercism submit bob.elm. Refresh, and then we have Bob. So our solution, what you can do, you'll see the number 1 up here. You can alter it, change things, and people can leave comments to let you know like what you could have done differently. I think you can leave likes or like votes or like a vote up or something. Or maybe they used to be able to do that. I'm not sure if you can anymore. But yeah, it's super cool that you can actually look at other people's. Yeah, regex solution looks a little more simple than what we came up with. Do we want to fetch another exercise and take a look at it? Refactor the existing one that we just worked with? Yeah, why don't we do that? Because instead of restarting a whole new one, is there anything we think could be better implemented with the way that we did this? So Brian mentioned something about unnecessary arguments, maybe?
That was when you had one function that was just identical to another. I'm not sure if you can do that.
I can do it on 24.
Okay.
24?
It's going to equal string that is, oh yeah. Right.
So does that mean we could potentially remove the argument here?
Well, you think signature
doesn't change. Yeah, the signature.
Oh yeah, you're right. So it takes in a string and returns a Boolean, and since, what is this, forward currying? Partial application. Essentially, like, whenever we call this function, we're already going to send some result to it anyway. And it looks like it still works. So I had heard of this thing called point-free programming. I thought it involved having less periods in your code. That's not a joke. And then I come to find that this is like essentially what it's talking about is like partial application. Like we're trying to simplify our logic without extraneous words. You could argue that it was more clear with the argument. But yeah, I think a lot of Haskell tends to take this format where there's no extra words anywhere really.
Why would you wanna do that? It's just more terse and readable, or?
It's pretty readable. I mean, it actually reads nicely. His questioning is, if it ends with the question.
It
Yeah, I guess
English that way.
I guess the fact that the method signature is there and has a string tells you you get to put a string in there. Otherwise, I would say, well, it's like magic at that point, and then I would.
Yeah, function signatures.
Would there be any benefit to changing the if statement to a case statement? Or would that even be possible?
No, you can't use a case on that.
Hmm.
The only thing you can do is probably use like create a new type that represents a different options.
So now we're really talking about Elm, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, we kind of drifted into some standard programming approaches. But one other way to solve this might be like to create a type alias, or no, a type yelling. So type statement could be one of only a few different options, yelling or questioning or something, whatever the hell. And then try to like basically wrap our code around something like that. Any other thoughts about like where we would go to refactor some of this stuff? I think it reads pretty well. So let's see, match regex. So in this guy's solution, he decided to check if it had any letters with a regex. But yeah, one of the cool things is you could actually see that people have a surprisingly large differentiation between their solutions. So an is uppercase, is question, string ends with, is not anything. So that's string is empty. Here we go. So type mode, they said, is the statement a question, silence, yelling, or other? And then they use the case statement based on, so this is exactly what you were saying. You can respond to. This feels really nice. It seems like it's long vertically, but pretty nice. So yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to like look through it. And yeah, you could see that other people might have started out with a certain solution and then iterated on that, even though no one left any comments about making it better. Here we go. Tighten it up a bit. Still not entirely happy. This guy was just breaking his back over. But he ended up with something very nice and concise, which is actually pretty cool. And a well-named tidbit argument. Is there anyone else that wants to take a look at refactoring? Or it looks like import character no longer was necessary because we got rid of that. Or Robert, did you want to take a regex stab at it?
No, that's fine. I was just.
So what else do we want to talk about? Like, why is this Elm program different from any other potential solution that you could come up with? Or what differentiates Elm from some alternatives?
Well, if we had the type system, like using the union type like he was talking about, I think then it would be truly different. Here, we're kind of just dealing with strings. It's just kind of an exercise in how do we do string manipulation in Elm, which I need to learn that too. But
Well, even if you have the type, you still have to do this process to figure out which one, which of the different options is the correct one.
So I think we stumbled on some of the interesting parts of like learning a program too, is like just figuring out between the syntax and knowing where to look for help is like a big part of it, right? Because who knew that string had a function called ends with until you kind of go look in that package to find out that exists. So yeah, I think that's a big part of programming with Elm, is just knowing that this Elm package library is so easy to just look things up. Sometimes I'm just like, or actually I've heard of an interesting approach was like, we wanted a function that was called hasLetter. and we knew kind of what we wanted from it, and we were just like, I hope that exists, right? So it turns out it didn't exist, but just even like the functional programming kind of promotes that sort of thinking where you're just like, okay, I have a function and I want it to do this. I want it to return this value or this type, and I want it to accept this other thing, and I really don't even need to know the details of how that happens. I just want to be able to give it this and get something back. And I think that's kind of an interesting part of Elm is that it encourages you to think in this sort of way where you can actually write the types first before you even know the details of how you're going to solve something. But were there any other thoughts about like, in terms of learning Elm, what was difficult about coming up here, writing parentheses and curly braces, and you know, which parts do you think could have gone better? Which parts were a struggle?
I think for me, understanding the problem domain was probably because you're trying to do two things at the same time. You're trying to understand what the problem is and come up with a solution. And like trying to figure out exactly what qualifies. Like that last part we're working, what qualifies for yelling. It took a while.
Yeah. So it's almost like we should have read the README. It's interesting too, though, because I think every time I've done exorcism, I very much do the approach of like, well, let me just do the first thing, and you know, it's a struggle every step after that because you just do it the most naive way, and then have to extrapolate, which can be difficult. Whereas if you have a good sense of what the problem is, then maybe you'll just avoid some giant roadblock that you're gonna just dive right into. Having said that, I think one of the things that's cool about Elm, which we've stumbled on a couple of times, was it's kind of nice to just get the program to a point where there's no red in it, just by hitting save and saying, oh, that actually didn't complain. And I think that's a big powerful part of Elm is not having to know whether or not your syntax is a little off. Was there anything about the syntax that felt like foreign, or I think we ran into a situation that was like, if then, and then it turns out you need an else statement. Was there anything else that kind of tripped you up?
I think the pipe operator goes to the back.
The pipe operator?
It took me a while to get that, to understand how that part works.
Yeah, Elixir does it like it's always the first argument, so that's why I'm like trained to just take that. So why? I know it's
And the thing is that once you get it, you start using it all over the place. So it becomes second nature.
I think one of the things that I was starting to think about, and I thought this is one of the questions I had at the beginning, if we wanted to go down this if-else kind of thing, was do you really want to create a union type at this point for something like this? Would you really get much benefit out of creating a union type here as opposed to creating a union type or maybe, well, it's like one of the questions I've been having is, so for like text inputs, create a union type for a text input that has a valid or a not valid. And string that go on. But am I trying to put union types in too many places? Like, am I overcomplicating something that really? That's kind of one of the questions that I'm having right now. It'd be fun. It'd be interesting to like do more of these types of things where we're debating about whether or not we should even create a union type. See where the blocks kind of are.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're going to do with it afterwards. Like here, we're just doing a test right on was it save? Was that the name of that function? Yeah, or hey. But if we were doing more operations with it, then a union type would make sense.
It may make sense, yeah.
And it gives a readability, the concise readability, so you know what the options are ahead of time, you don't get lost in the weeds. Potentially, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, might end up overusing it.
Yeah, sure.
And you mentioned the way the tests were, you just look at the first one, program to that, then go on and on and on like that. But that's how we have to do things in real life, right? You know, when you don't know the answers up front, you get some requirements change. Oh, they didn't tell me that, or you know. So it's nice to know that the compiler is your friend and refactoring is easier and you you're not gonna get it perfect the first time.
Elm has the best refactoring